Hello, my name is Adaeze. You can call me your wellness buddy. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this community, we speak about wellness and life that is rooted in God and love. The focus is to help you live a life of wellness in abundance as a multi-relational being. You could be a mother, a father, you're in relationship with your dog, your friend, your family, even yourself. And that's what this is about, to help you be rooted in love and God and express who you should be fully. If today's topic resonates with you, like, share, comment, and do well to subscribe. And don't forget to share with someone who could benefit from this. Hello, wellness buddies. Welcome to today's edition of our wellness series where we're exploring various topics. And today I'm really excited to talk about fatherhood. I don't hear a lot of people talk about fathers. And so I'm really passionate about this. And I have with me here John Nova, and Kelly. And they are my friends, my really good friends. I feel really privileged to have them in my life. And I'm also privileged to know a number of things of how they raise their kids. And I couldn't think of two better people to have this conversation with. Today, the focus is raising children who are emotionally, financially well and strong. So when we talk wellness, it seems really broad, and I'm very mindful because when you come on a wellness chat, talk, podcast, whatever, you're thinking more of physical fitness, you're thinking of your food, but finances is what ties us all really. Everything is connected to money. So, and these people are making money, even if they like to be modest, okay? No black tax, I'm not putting you out there, but they are working really hard and trying their best. But I'm going to leave them to introduce themselves. And please, when you introduce yourself, remember to tell us the age range or ages of your children. So anyone listening would, connect with that and sort of see where you're coming from. So I'm going to start with John.
Okay. Hey, thanks for having me, and it's great to be here with Kelly. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. This is a good friend of mine, but let me just give a quick background about myself. My name is John Nova, and I'm a man of many hats. First of all, I'm a father. I'm a father of four. My first child is 14, then my first daughter is 11, then my second daughter is 7, and then my last child, my son, is 3 years old.
What a range.
Yeah, I'm a tech bro, so I'm a tech project manager, but I'm also a techpreneur. So I have a company, and we do project management training, product management training, also provide consulting services in terms of project management and software and application development. I've been in tech for quite a while, so that's sort of my bread and butter. I'm very passionate about tech and AI and business and all that kind of jazz. Um, About me, I also like to write. So I have books, and I write by the name of JC Nova. But I like to think of myself, first of all, as a father, and then other things sort of derive from there. I'm also married, been married for about 15 years, which has been amazing, have an amazing wife. And I've been blessed. So I'm also learning a lot about parenting because I have a child who is a teenager right now. So I think this is going to be very interesting conversation. There's quite a lot to unpack. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was really good because, like, when you go for an interview, the first thing they ask, tell me about yourself. It's like, so thanks a lot for sharing all of that. And yeah, I've read John's book. They took a trip. I don't read fiction. I read it for sentimental reasons because you're my friend. But I must say that's the only book I've ever finished. Like, because of the quality of the writing and the fascinating story. So yeah,
Thank you.
you can. I'll put all of John's stuff on the link, and you can get the training, read his books. He's just a man of many hats, like you said. So thank you for being here, and I'm sure people would learn a lot from you today. And
Thank
Kelly,
you.
your turn.
Oh, thank you, Adaeze. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Um, like John, I'm equally one of many hats. I play many roles in husband, and the father, and the brother, entrepreneur, but of all these different titles, um, yeah, I just like to see myself as a guy who just want to optimize the life of others, whether it's through business, whether it's through mentorship, about just showing up, living intentionally and leaving people better than I met them. And I sort of do that, especially from my own family. Yeah. So yeah. So let's see how the conversation goes. Look forward to having.
Yeah. What about your kids? What's their age group?
At my age, my kids range from age 12 to a bit more. My first son is 12. It's not quite 12 yet, but it reminds me that he'll be 12 soon.
Yeah,
And
yes.
my daughter is 9. I think our baby just turned, I think, 7 months now.
Yeah, you see, it's so similar, like the age range from teenage
Yeah.
to like little child. It's like
I don't
crazy.
have a teenager yet.
Well,
We'll get
almost,
there.
almost. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so good. Yeah, thank you, Kelly. I know that about you. Nobody spends time with you and live the same. So and it's incredible that you know, like it's not something about like it's not something you're. How do I say this? It's not random. And just for the first time, I'm hearing you say it as though I'm intentional about this. I want people to leave me a bit different and better than they met me. So I mean, I honor you even more today, knowing that it's not just a coincidence. So well done. And thank you for introducing yourself. Kelly, though you try to be modest, I'm going to push you out there. Kelly has a blog, influentialfathers.com, and he's just sent one, the latest one to me, and I enjoyed reading that. He also is a pharmacist. Yeah, he runs his own pharmacy, so he's not working for someone. He runs his own. I'm putting it out there because it's important that anyone listening would see that you are being a father, because you're going to say a lot about being a father, but you're also being an example in the way that you are leading yourself and managing your businesses. And I'm not going to share other businesses, but you've got other things. And I've stayed in one of your Airbnb and it was incredible. So, yes, that's why I said these guys are legit quietly just making money and being good fathers and just doing life like it's easy. But I also know you're not perfect, and that's why you're special and you're here today because you can give us real life examples of both what you've done well and maybe things that you struggled with if you reflect back. So, first question, I've got a series of questions which I think would really help us unpack this topic of raising emotionally and financially well and strong kids. So, the first one is for Kelly, but is a trick question because even though we're talking about kids, this one is for you. Apart from sleeping, what do you do to rest from all your responsibilities as a father, husband, owner of a couple of businesses, and all the many hats you wear?
Apart from sleeping, did you say?
Yes.
Mm, but you caught me because I spin a lot of plates. So many things happening at the same time, and as we mentioned, I wear different hats. Um, and over time, what I've learned to do is to just get into my own humanity and try to just live in moments where I'm not defined by any of those roles, where I'm not a dad, I'm not a husband, I'm not a brother. And this can be as simple as taking my early morning walk on my own. Um, Usually I do it with my kids, but there are moments where I tend to just go on my own. Um, because of what I do, I'm on the road most of the time. And so you sometimes have me listen to podcasts and meditate and reach out to friends because I do find that these things the help out when you have to sometimes do a 3 hour journey. There's only so much you could listen to. But then you take that moment and reach out to a friend who maybe you haven't spoken to in a few months. So apart from sleeping, I do a lot of these. I do a lot of these things ultimately to sort of just make me make me sound.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I remember one day you called me and you said you went to a restaurant and sat there and you really didn't want to eat, but you went to rest, which
Yes,
was funny. Like, I'm just here
yes,
watching people make noise and it's just nice. And that really
yes,
caught me. And that's exactly why I asked you this question because I kind of know the answer. And people need to hear that you drop those hats.
yes.
And I sat with a lady once and I said, if we take out everything that you are, what would you be right now? And that was an interesting question because she said, Adaeze, I'll just be without any ambition. Like, well, sometimes you can be without any ambition. And it felt like I gave her that permission to just rest.
Mm.
Sometimes that's what we need. Thank you. Right, John. Your family seem to participate in like karate. Or actually, before I get to that question, I would ask you, how do you take care of your emotional and mental well-being?
It's interesting that Kelly was talking about taking time off to walk and everything, and I went to like influential fathers.com, your blog, and I was like, oh, this is really nice, because a lot of the things you said actually resonate with me. Somebody said that one marked difference between an introvert and an extrovert is how they recharge, and how that ability to recharge related to the interactions with people. Because as an introvert, I'm an introvert. My day-to-day life, I have to talk to people. I have to talk to a lot of people,
Mm,
and a lot of my corporate experience or work experience has been doing things like consulting, sales, business development, project management, and you're constantly talking. But how I recharge is when I'm away from people, when I can actually get away, right? Like
mm,
when I get to a party and everything, I look for one person to talk to. I'm not talking to a lot of people. So how do I preserve my emotional sort of well-being? I've accepted who I am, and I've accepted that I recharge in silence. So from time to time, I like to take time off to be by myself. It also
mm,
helps me a lot to spend time just writing because writing helps you to be clear in your thoughts, right? And the clearer you are in your thoughts, the easier it is for you to articulate your thoughts and carry people along. I also find that just taking breaks just really help. If when you're thinking about being a father and a husband and a brother and a son and and this and that, sometimes you constantly grinding and hustling,
mm,
and then you can have sometimes there is a tendency to start to feel guilty when nothing is happening. But I think just you've got to accept sometimes that nothing happening is a good thing. Every military general or those who are involved in like military strategy always bake in time for just rest as part of the military expedition. Soldiers and guys in special forces are actually trained to sleep quickly. Because if you keep just going on because there's stuff to do, there is always stuff to do.
mhm,
And then sometimes you just burn out. So I think, like you said, I just give myself permission sometimes to, take my foot off the accelerator and just rest. It's okay. It's not wrong. I can take time off to play and rest and sleep. Right? Yeah, that's how I take care of my emotional well-being.
great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, back to you, Kelly. So you mentioned the work earlier, and I know you still do it now. However, there was a season in your life where you worked with your son almost every day, where you went training with him, when he was
Yep,
still in primary, and he was into football. So you'd wake up with
yep.
him. What time was it? 5 or 5:30, something like that.
Too embarrassed too embarrassed to say.
But he woke up. He woke you some mornings.
Yeah, we're talking half 4.
4:30. I even said thought it was 5. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh.
I
I feel
I
cold
almost
thinking
can't bring
about
myself to say that now because each time
it.
I think about it, someone's like, what are you doing?
Anyway, But there's lessons in that. So he would
Okay.
wake up very early with you and go for
Mm,
runs because he had to
yeah.
do really hardcore trainings for his
Yeah.
football. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I guess, and you used to mentor him in those walks. Can you share how it
Yeah.
impacted him emotionally or socially as well? Because you're having conversations.
Oh, yeah. It's needless to say, we went for a football tournament this Saturday gone, and it was a tournament that had a lot of. We were talking close to 700 kids.
Hmm.
Usually, when we go to tournaments like this, I say to him, at the end of the day, there's only going to be one or two winners. A lot of parents will go home with their kids without a medal. I'll prefer to come home with you with a medal. And truly, it's team one. So this is the kind of conversation we have in the morning, and it's very it's emotional in many respects. When we started it, it was due to the fact that I just found myself working long hours. I could never see enough of him. You would know I mentioned that I've got a baby now. Our last child is just 7 months. I'm watching him crawl, and it dawned on me that in the early days of my son, who's now 11 going to 12, the early days of his growing up, I didn't see him crawl.
Hmm.
I didn't see him crawl. Um, I didn't see him take his first step. I missed out on some of these things. So obviously, when he grew up and he had a liking for football, I had to pause and think, this can't carry on. You're waking up very early in the morning and going to work. By the time you come back, your son's already asleep. And I thought, well, I felt guilty about it. And I decided I was going to be intentional. That's where the whole influential father concept came about. This idea of being intentional,
Mm.
um, waking him up early to begin with. We had different slogans. I could share them if you wanted me to, but we had different slogans.
Yeah,
We wake
please
up
do.
early. Yeah. And we say things like wake up early, don't be lazy. So we run around for a good 20 to 30 minutes. I would say wake up early. Wake up early. He would say don't be lazy. And I would say things like knuckle down, and he would say get the job done. So we have a lot of yes,
Yeah.
it was quite an experience, and we moved on from that. We still do it. We're not as regular as we used to. At some point, I had a conversation with my friend about it, and he said, "Well, what does your daughter think about this?" And before we know it, it became myself, my son, and my daughter. And this essentially became moments where I bond with them. Obviously, I don't work crazily like I used to do in the past, but in that time, it was necessary for conversation, it was necessary for bonding, it was necessary. Initially, I thought I was doing it to be there for them. It
Mm.
was just as good for my own mental health because when you leave home in the morning knowing that you spent time with the kids and you're looking forward to it the following day. The things they speak to me about at school prior to those um, prior to those sessions, we never had those conversations. We never did. It just the conversations were just how are you? Are you okay? That kind of thing. But
Mm.
uh, it's changed a lot of things. Definitely, it's changed a lot of things.
I don't know what to say. It's funny because I have a background to this, but just hearing you say it, it's really inspiring because as a mom, I need to remember to allow my husband be a father to the children. because my motherhood mind cannot grasp waking a child up 4:35. I'm like, you want to kill my kids, right? But you were
Mm.
able to do that and just really train these children. And I've had conversations with your first son, River. He speaks so well. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
compared to
Thank
a
you.
lot of
That's very
children,
nice to hear.
he speaks really
Thank you.
well. He's a great
Thank you.
conversationalist and he keeps you going. Even the questions he dares to ask, it's not just curiosity. He knows how to ask leading questions, and all of that is because of your mentorship. So yeah, well done
Thank
to
you.
you, and thanks for
Thank you.
sharing that.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you.
okay, John. I know your family seem to participate in karate, and sometimes I see it on your WhatsApp stories. You show their belts and stuff, and the stunts you do with your son, and also you talk about silences and meditation. Can you share why and how you get the kids to do it? Because in a lot of homes, apart from the karate, um, like silence and meditation is far fetched. It's like, what? My kids can be quiet, so please share.
Sure. Um, how I get my kids to do, I think that if you think about how people define stuff as normal, normal is really based on what you saw as part of your environment. So if you grew up, for example, in England, and I asked you, hey, what's your best food? I don't think you're going to say, oh, my best food is pounded yam. No, what's normal to you is like, toad in a
Sausage and
hole,
mash.
bang of a mash, or whatever, right? That's what you saw as
Rice
normal.
and broccoli.
Absolutely. And if you grew up elsewhere, then what you see is normal. And I think it's the same thing with the dynamics of the home and family and what kids see as normal. If kids grow up in a family where there is silence sometimes and parents are quiet or parents read a lot of books or parents pray, then that becomes their normal, right? Same way if kids see if they're in a home where there's a lot of fighting, right, and argument, then that also becomes their normal. So I used to do martial arts. I think my wife dabbled into martial arts at some point. We are both big on. My wife is very quiet. I'm introverted. We're also very big on meditation. So as we had kids, instead to think about, what's the culture I want to grow them in. My family is really built around our faith, right? And so if you'd ask and say, hey, Novas, who are we? And there's something we'd say over and over and over. And it's interesting that Kelly, there's certain things you see over and over. And if you're a Christian, you see this sort of principle in the Bible that you will do certain things. It says, and the reason why you do is your kids are going to say to you, why do you do this? And then you give an explanation, right? That becomes your normal. And so I would say, if you ask my kids, like, who are we as Novas? And there are three things that we sort of try to anchor the family around: that we belong to God, that we are warriors, and we are business people. There are many things that are possible. There are many things that, you can sort of pursue, but ultimately we want to build around these three cores. So when we say, we belong to God, that we acknowledge God is front and center. There's certain things that we can or cannot do because of that affiliation to God. And sometimes we live in Canada where it's an interesting climate and different kind of things are said in society. And when kids ask me, why do they do this kind of things? And I say, anybody is free to do whatever they want to do. Well, we belong to God. We're warriors and business people. So I'm not knocking anything anybody else wants to do. It's up to them. But again, we're different. The second thing is that we're warriors because a lot of life is going to require strength. I think that before you leave, living with your parents, you don't appreciate certain things. You don't appreciate things like tenacity. You don't appreciate the role of routines. Many times, making money is not a glamorous endeavor. It's just a grind and finding ways to automate things or ways to be consistent or ways to keep doing the necessary things. And it's not always fun. So you're always going to have to push through. And it's very interesting that there seems to be a huge correlation between people who work out and keep fit and success. But if you think about it, it starts to make sense that you get up in the morning and have to wear your sneakers or you have to do push-ups. You're not always going to feel like, right? But you get into the habit of doing it and then you have that tenacity. And when you're doing business or good relationships, it's the same way. It's not every day you feel loving towards your wife. It's not every day you feel caring towards your kids. It's not every day anybody feels like going to their jobs or doing their grind, but you do what you have to do. So in that way, there is sort of strength required to push through life, but also to defend yourself and those you love. In a suboptimal world, there will be scenarios where you have to stand up and be tough. And there's something that Jordan Peterson, says, which really resonates with me. He says, if a person is powerless, right, and the person is powerless and walks away from confrontation, it doesn't make the person good. The person is just powerless. For you to be good, it means that you have the capability, you have the capacity to be dangerous, to be evil, to be strong, to be tough, to fight when you need to, but you decide not to. Then you're good. So Jesus, for example, like there's this song, old hymn that, Jesus could have called his angels. It wasn't like Jesus couldn't defend himself, right? He decided he was going to lay down his life, if you're looking at things from a sort of Christian background, right? So in pretty much the same way, children have to be tough. You have to be able to defend yourself. And that's where sort of martial arts comes in. That's where playing chess comes in. That's where thinking and mental rigor comes in. And then there's also the business component as well. And I find as they grow older, as I talk a lot about meditation, you're really beginning to appreciate it more. My children, especially the older ones, are very artistic. All three of there's certain things that are like culture in my house. So if you're growing up in my house, we're going to do stand up on weekdays, where we're going to go through scripture. We're going to talk about what we're grateful for in our daily lives and what we're grateful for from everyone's perspective. And it's to really teach people to do what they need to do, irrespective of feelings. Right. So just like Kelly's son, you guys wake up in the morning, you don't always feel like it. In the same way, sometimes you get up in the morning, you don't feel like, well, you're going to have to do stand up. And you may have had an argument with your wife, but you're going to say something that you're grateful about her, something about her that fills you with gratitude. And same thing with your siblings. So you get used to these things. So in pretty much the same way, in addition to that, everybody in my family is going to learn to swim. Everybody's going to learn to fight. Everybody's going to learn to play music, right? And everybody's going to do business. Because I think that when it comes to life, you have to be able to make money, because money is a currency that helps you, get a lot of things done. It's a critical resource. You have to be strong in your body. You have to have artistic expression and appreciation, because sometimes life isn't just about do. There's sometimes a softer side, that just brings things together. And so for me, for that to attempt to create children who are balanced, that's why there's been emphasis on those different components: being able to swim, being able to fight, being able to do music, being able to read, being able to write, just so you have children who are rounded, right? And like Kelly said, a lot of it has to do with intentionality. We decided to really have rituals and patterns, because the interesting thing about life is always lifing. If you decide you're going to do nothing, life keeps going on. If you decide you're going somewhere, life keeps going on. If you decide you're the one who will train your kids, life keeps going on. If you decide society is going to train your kids, life keeps going on, right? So you've got to decide, do I just want life to happen to me? Or in this time I have, do I want to say, hey, what's going to give me and mine an advantage to cause, to give some sort of benefit to the world? Right. And once you start to think along those lines and certain things become critical, what is the framework, or what's the ongoing process that delivers the outcomes I'm looking for? That's how I like to think about things. Right. So I'm not thinking about, this big event where they win it. Like Kelly's talking about, his children winning, his son winning a medal. Right. And I think that's how a lot of people think. A lot of people just say, his son won a medal. But what's happened is their family patterns and processes, and an output from the process is the medal you see, right? So if you get the process right, if you get the rhythms right, if you get the operations of the family right, certain beneficial outcomes will happen. So if there's anything I'd like to say to fathers, it's really, what's the pattern of your household? And if you've got to walk backward to say, I like to think in threes. What are the three broad major outcomes? And then the current configuration of the home and how we run things, how does it help to deliver those outcomes? If we keep doing what we're doing, like I like talking about money, for example, and I say stuff like, when I talk to my children around, money and finance, I'm like, hey, just like you have bills hitting your account every month to pay for this and that and that, do you have a debit hitting your account, your primary account to go into your investment account, right? Because that continuous pattern is going to build wealth for you and not just your ISP and so on. Um, so going back to artistic expressions, my children are very artistic, and they're also finding that in addition to playing piano, just those moments of silence help them to resolve a lot of things internally, right? And at first, it was like, oh, why are we sitting down in silence? But over a period of time, they say, oh, I sat in silence and I felt this, or I was thinking about this, or my mind was this way. And then I also reinforce that it's in silence that you become more self-aware. What do I feel? Why do I feel what I feel? Is this an environmental thing or is it me? Is there something I need to change, right? And so on. So over a period of time, children may oppose it, but if they see it all the time, it becomes their normal. Then over a period of time, they start to see the benefits of that normal, and then they start to live that way. And then when they have their children, they also start to pass that across to their children.
Yeah. I hope people are writing. I'm like so full right now. Good stuff. Thank you so much for sharing that, John. And I'm not going to go deep into what you said because you were just so articulate. I'm going to pick out the silence bits, especially. The thing a lot of adults struggle with the most is actually silence. And this is not exclusive to extroverts, it's not an extrovert problem because even an introverted person makes a lot of noise in their hearts. They have a lot of conversations in their hearts. So it's not a case of because you're not being with people, then you're silent. But that silence, that ability to be still, and I love that scripture that says, be still and know. There is a knowing when you're still. There is a self awareness. There is a self reflection. And in the silence mental rest masterclass I teach, the first thing I would say is silence is when it's is equivalent to listening. When you're silent, that's when you're listening the most. And you're listening to yourself, and many times that's when you hear God speak. So these things you're saying, like it seems so simple, but it's not. But well done to you for starting now. So it becomes the norm. You're raising children that other adults will say, "Oh, I just can't be still. Oh, I'm just overwhelmed." They'll be like, "But you can just be silent," and people don't get it. So when you starting now, it's incredible, and I just hope a lot of young fathers who are listening today are learning from this. So thank you. Kelly, I'm going to come back to you. You got this subtle smile. Do you want to add to what John has said?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Interestingly, the issue of silence. When I take my kids out, it's the sort of thing we occasionally practice. Literally, take them to a swing in the playground, get them to sit there, and we're doing literally nothing in those moments. We're not talking to each other. We're just there. And the point of silence is big because in our household, there's certain patterns that I see where when the kids are about to step out of line, my wife steps in almost immediately. And she doesn't like the fact occasionally that I step back because I say something along the lines of just help yourself. You don't always have to just get in, just help yourself, see things play out. And it works. So much so now, the kids know that dad only speaks when it is serious. And it's gotten to the point they take me more seriously than they do her. And it's
Of course.
so it's and I say that to her every now and again. Look, you don't always have to say something. Just leave it. Leave it. And yeah, it's an interesting point. I think John mentioned the routine as well. That's equally something that we have embraced. And yeah, it's, I like what you do, John. I like what you do. identify with me.
It's cool. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's on behalf of your wife. I'd say this: moms just sometimes I do those things, and I'm always stepping in, and sometimes I acknowledge it, and I'm just floating. You just can I have cup? Get it? Can I? You just do it, and then you think, no, the person didn't say please, or you're just reacting because you're just not natural beings, just keep solving everyone's problem, but that doesn't help. Those moments of silence, even though it's in a different context, is important for the person to make that mistake and say, oh, I just made a mistake, how do I rectify this, giving them the space to be. So thank you for bringing that in as well. Okay, so I'm going to go deeper now into like finances, money, um, and what I find is, or what I've observed, is wealthy people, a lot of wealthy people, I mean, the really wealthy people in the world, when I hear like they're giving most of their wealth to charity, or they wouldn't give their children stuff because they feel the kids will not handle the wealth like they would, or they come up with all kinds of reasons, and oftentimes their kids are not worthy of handling their wealth. And that always blows my mind. I feel disappointment. I'm angry on behalf of the children. But then I'm like, well, they have a point. They can't hand over X amount of wealth or money to people who would not value it because they know how hard it works. However, I'm hearing you and John talking about the patterns passing down. John, they already know, your children already know they're in a business family, they've got this strong identity. So I guess my first question with regards to this money thing, and for you, Kelly, is how do you raise children to have a good relationship with money or have good financial wellness?
Kids will generally copy what they see. I think it's, John's mentioned that already. My ethos generally is first and foremost to optimize myself, my life, so that I can optimize the life of those around me, beginning with the kids, and they get it. Optimizing myself would be going to focus on just the financial aspect of it. Let's see what we do. We run the service accommodation business. And you mentioned you stayed in one of ours. Thanks for the good feedback there. But the days where we need to prepare for a guest coming in.
Sorry, let me just say this, and I didn't have to pay. I stayed for free. Like, um, that was a beautiful gift. But yeah, okay.
That's kind to hear. So the kids, they're just as involved. A lot of work going to make the accommodation homely for the guest. So once we know a guest is coming, the kids are just as involved. And at the end of it, just give them £2 here, £5 there. And they're so happy to this feeling of I've worked and I've been paid. So it works. In the early days, we gave them tokens, which they put in jars, and you have them shaking it around. I've got more tokens than you, and you have the elder, my son, wanting to do more to get more. But then we found that there was some unhealthy kind of rivalry there, so we had to tweak things a bit. Had to tweak things a bit. So yeah, so that's one. Equally, we normalize the conversation about money. We normalize the conversation about money. I'll give you an example. I took my son to play football, and on this trip, I could see that he wasn't running around as much as he would do. And because I know how he likes to play, I almost felt like something is not quite right. He wasn't performing well. So at the end of the game, I spoke to him and said to him, look, what sort of performance is that? Almost as if to say, that's not you. He goes to me, my shoes are tight. And I was like, why did you tell me? Because a few weeks before, I hear you say something to mom about money. And I thought we wouldn't be able to afford it. And at that point, I thought to myself, that's not the kind of problems we're talking about. If you need a new football, if you need a new football boot, if you need a new football boot, that's fine. We can do that. And almost there and then, I ordered the football boots and the football boots arrived. But that's one occasion where we have the conversation openly about money. Equally, we try to teach them about delayed gratification as well. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the marshmallow experiment. Yeah, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but
People listening might not be familiar. If you want to share that, that would be great. Yeah.
yeah, the marshmallow experiment was essentially a group of kids being put in an environment where they were given marshmallows, and the idea was kids were told that there was an extra marshmallow to come if they delayed having the marshmallow in front of them. Those kids, they were more likely to wait so that they can get the extra. And it was all around delayed gratification. And so the times where we give our kids money, and the expectation is that you're not necessarily expected to just take it and just buy anything you like. You like because the money is there. So we speak to them about things like investing, things like saving, things like spending, and equally giving. So those four things: giving to charity, investing, saving, and spending. And these are the conversations we normalize. What I did at some point equally was to introduce them to the different uncles I have online. So if you say Uncle Dave, for example, my son knows you're talking about the Ramsey. If you say Uncle Robert, he knows you're talking about Robert Kiyosaki. So they have this which uncle is that one that so we introduced them to the mentors we follow, and overall, I think this has helped. This has helped their finances. So to summarize, normalize the conversation about money. Teach them about the concept of delayed gratification. Force them to understand that it's okay to give, it's okay to spend, it's okay to invest, it's okay to save. And first, just refer them to mentors that you are. Don't even have to be mentors on the internet. It could just be close friends that come around. Yeah, that's what we've done.
Oh, that's a mini masterclass. Thank you so much. That's really rich, solid stuff you share there, and yeah, it's good stuff. Thank you. I really, really admire what you're doing with your children, and yeah, I wish both of you. Kelly lives in Swindon, in the
Yeah,
UK, and John lives in Canada. Can't remember the name of your town, Ottawa or Hawaii or something.
Ontario.
Ontario.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wish you were my neighbors because I know that you're great fathers. And just the thing is, I don't know how many people listening right now, but there is this ease when you're talking about it. And I know it's not It's not as easy. I know, Kelly, you watch The Apprentice with your kids. That's one thing you do, and you
Yeah,
you
yeah,
all have conversations about it. So
yeah.
you could
Talking about
your list
mentors.
exactly your list is endless. So I'm really really grateful for those examples. And yeah, I don't know what
Dragon's
to say.
Den is one of them
So
as well. So
yeah, Dragons Den as well. So yeah, I'm having those conversations and yes, so well done, well done. And I hope people are learning. So John, to you, what tips would you give someone with kids around the range of 5 to 12? So 5 meaning obviously they can have sensible conversations, even from 4, right, about money. Like how can they educate their children about money?
Sure. 5 to 12. I think Kelly has made an excellent point when it comes to finance and family. And that's really that, you've got to have conversations about it. So the first thing when it comes to parents and, getting their kids more financially aware is the parents have to go on the journey themselves. It's very hard to teach what you're not really practicing. So the first thing is like Kelly's saying, he's talking about Robert Kiyosaki and the apprentice. If parents are not interested in that kind of stuff and they're interested in just, like movies and Netflix, then that's what kids are going to do. Right. So the
right,
first thing is the parents have to go on the journey themselves. I think the second thing is that you want to start to give the kids some small projects. And this is what sort of works for me. So for me, right, to kill many birds with one stone, both my children are employed by my company, right? And so they get paid every month, right? And it also means that my two older children, to be precise, and both of them have to work. So, for example, my daughter over a period of time, she's our CapCut guru. So when I do videos for social media, my daughter is going to do the edits, right, for CapCut. So she's good at CapCut and videos and sound, and she does personal projects herself, right? And she started doing this from about when she was
Sorry,
10.
could you remind us their ages just in
Oh
case
yeah,
with
that's
people
fine.
joining late?
Yeah. So I'm talking of my 14-year-old son and then my 11-year-old daughter. So
Okay.
she's pretty good with CapCut. And then he's very good with writing. So when I'm doing socials, many times he's going to be responsible for taking the assets and putting them, he's going to be critiquing, he's going to be posting them on the different social media. So post on YouTube, post on Facebook, post on LinkedIn, and so on, put in the hashtags and all that kind of jazz, right? And the idea is that they sort of get into being part of something bigger than themselves so that they can see the connection between their input and all of us going out, like end of the month or something to a place to a restaurant and all just eating together. Right. It's no longer just theoretical. I'm putting in this work, I'm getting in this rewards, and all of us as a family are benefiting. Right. So that's something that it's very tangible because it's when you're an adult that it's very easy for you to make sense of things that are conceptual. Children don't really think so. Like you're saying, you give them their piggy bank, and if I cut grass, I get some dollars. Oh, it's growing up. That's what children can relate to, and that's what's fun and exciting. The other thing I also do with the kids as well is I like to talk about leverage. And so I'll say stuff like, hey, you have to do this work. And if you can do these activities and you can get to $10, I'm going to double your money for you, right? So that it's not a case of me just giving you money. And it's also not a case, so that I want the gears to start to turn in your head that you can work and if you get a certain amount, then you can double your money the legal way. And this is just before they get older, where they start to understand the power of things like, understand the details of the power of things like compound interest and drip savings and all those kind of investments, right? That they start to already understand that, okay, I can put in work, meaning I have to be skillful. I can get some sort of output, get some sort of reward. And then there are scenarios where I may be able to take that money I have and get way more on the money, right? That's investment and getting, decent returns on investments. Then we talk a lot about money. It's not something we're doing right now, but there was a time where every day the kids had to read a chapter of a book and summarize the chapter, right? And the reason was, different people have different learning styles. Some people are visual, some people, get stuff from projects. But often when you read something, you retain it. But if you're going to write what you read, then it reinforces the learning significantly. And so for my son particularly, there were certain financial books he had to read. Rich Dad Poor Dad, $1 Million Weekend, then Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, and so on. But the idea was read these books about money and then write about these things, right? So that it solidifies it. And I'll end on this note. When you do know this, a lot of parents already know this intuitively, or the two things I want to say. A lot of parents already know intuitively, but the first 29 times you talk about something, it won't stick with your children, right? So you've got to say it again and again and again and again and again and again, right? And over a period of time, they just say, oh, dad always goes on about this thing. But those statements are going somewhere, they're landing. And then as they get older and they start to interact and engage with life, those things start to bear fruit, right? They start to think. So sometimes we have very brutal conversations about money. Like, I'm not a huge fan. I'm not against doing a 9 to 5 or working for someone, but I like to call out very clearly that your opportunity is capped in some way, and you don't have as much leverage when it comes to time.
That's good.
So I call that out, and sometimes you're like, and I'm like, I have nothing against, maybe a teacher saying this, but do you want to teach? If you want to teach and that's the life you want, that's perfectly fine for you. But if you're interested in, in a lot of money, like there's a statement in this book called Richest Man in Babylon. It's very powerful. It says, do not inquire from a bread maker about the stars. So if you want to be wealthy, sometimes the person you respect the most is not in the best position to advise you about wealth. So if you want to be wealthy, you want to talk to people who are wealthy. And if you want to have great morals, then you want to talk to people that have great morals, right? But don't confuse good morals with wealth. So in the same way, right, you've got to, people have different parts to life. So if you're trying to understand and grow your ability to grow wealth, then listen to people who are, along, who have gone farther along in that thing you're interested in. And then second thing I was going to say is children by nature want to help. They want to add value. It's the reason why, like you're trying to do the laundry and your children want to do the laundry with you. It's almost like before we get messed up in the head with TV and everything, when children come to the world, they want to add value. And value creation is the fundamental basis for creating wealth, right? So I think what's very powerful is when a child wants to, add value, is to encourage them to continue to add value. And then over a period of time, once in a while, not every time, so you don't have an over transactional child, they should see the returns on investment in value, right? I work and work and work, I work and work and work. And then at some point when I work, all of a sudden daddy gives me something. Oh wow, okay. So it doesn't give me this thing all the time, but I'm getting something when I work, right? And then over time you can sort of teach them, wealth building skills, how to provide service or a product to get money, how to validate an idea or concept so that you don't waste a lot of time building something people don't want. How to push through tenacity. How to sell to your immediate first circle. My son does cadets, and sometimes they will give them stuff to sell. At the end of the day, most businesses fundamentally come down to selling something, and you're going to have to communicate something, right? So being able to get out of your way and sell and all that kind of stuff. So I think those are practical ways for people who have really young kids. If they want to help, encourage them to help. Be the person that you want your children to be able to learn from, right? And point them in the direction. Have those conversations. Talk to them about investment. Talk to them about leverage, right? And then just give them all the education they need because at some point it will start to stick.
Hmm, hmm. Thank you so much. That's another masterclass one on two. Kelly's one was one on one, and yours is one on two. Like it's brilliant stuff, rich wisdom. You're both just dishing out like it's regular stuff. So really grateful. But now you've said that, there are two things that come to mind, and I'm imagining someone listening who is a career person, right? So this is open to both of you, whoever wants to answer, because you've talked about businesses as though everyone is doing business. So I'm a doctor, I go to work, come back. How do I teach my kids to make money? Because I know a lot of parents would put the way we send our kids to coding, a coding class online. They could. I've seen apps come up on my Facebook. Teach your kids about money, and then use this app and blah blah blah. So these parents resort to using those apps that are readily available. But you are talking of hands-on stuff, and you're connecting into house chores to assisting in business, employing your kids. So if you do a 9 to 5, you haven't got a business, no side hustle, how would you then educate them about money? Before you answer that, one thing I picked up from Kelly's statement was when you spoke about your child being reluctant to ask for money or his shoe to be bought because he felt you're unable to afford it. This happens in homes where every time they're talking about money, the bills and all, that negative conversation around money. So I'm mindful that could be something someone could learn from. However, for a 9 to 5, how would you then teach your kids about money?
If I'm speaking specifically to my kids, before I became a business owner, that you mentioned it, they could see how hard that it worked. They could see how often um, that it wasn't around. So it was almost a reminder for them that the reason they're waking up early is because dad had to do long days. And probably wouldn't mind me saying this. When I went on to buy business, it was because suddenly where I worked for 10 years got bought by new owners. And daddy was out for a job. And so they saw that. So dad, are you going to work today? Well, no, dad doesn't have a job to go to. So they saw that. So I'm not sure if this answers the question directly, but the point I'm getting at is kids can see these things, and of course you relate what you're going through to where you hope to be. Eventually, of course, I bought a business. Ironically, they're not necessarily aware that I have, because I've almost tried to sort of shield that away from my 11 years old son talking about inheritance the other day. I thought, what are you talking about inheritance? That's a bit odd. So I try to be as real as I can be. Certainly, the conversation that my wife and I were having regarding money, which he may have picked up, must have been along the lines of how do we achieve this? And of course, in his mind, it's football. If they're talking about that, they can't afford the football boots. And the reason I ordered it there and then was to almost say to him that, look, we're blessed in many ways, and we can sort of count our blessings in that sense. But I'm not sure if that answered the question, but I just wanted to draw the link between where you are, what the kids can observe, and where you want to be, and how day to day you're doing things routinely to get there.
So invariably, you're telling us all to be business owners because job is not secure.
Yeah, I think you saw me at that moment where my job was gone.
Yeah.
You find out, if I may just elaborate on this issue of a job, you find out that we live in a society now. I don't know what it's like in Canada, but I could speak specifically to the UK setup. Suddenly, 40 hours don't do it anymore.
Mm.
Six, in fact, when I mentioned that to mate, he goes, "What are you talking about? 60 hours don't even do it." So if you're working 60 hours for the most part, at best you're just doing that to just sustain, to pay your bills, and whatever is left at the end of it, you'll be lucky there's anything left. And
Mm.
so, of course, when you have a business, there's a different mindset to it. I think John mentioned leverage. There's so much more that comes to that territory. When you have a business, of course, not least, you will find that at the most, the one thing we pay is tax. Is taxes. The
Yeah.
reason I'm very the reason I'm very heavy on Robert Kiyosaki is that he wrote a book that essentially changed my life. I know everyone knows the Rich Dad Poor Dad story, but that's not the book that changed it for me.
Cash flow
It was
quadrant.
it was a cash flow quadrant.
Yep.
That book changed it for me completely.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, if you've not read that book, you've picked your own pocket. There's the one book that changed it, and immediately, as soon as I lost my job after 10 years, I thought, I never want to be here anymore. In fact, I had to remove myself from that employee space. Wow, just remove myself from there. And right now, it's all around the entrepreneur, the investor, and the self-employed. So I just took myself away from the quadrant. And of course, the point is, the kids can see these things. Am I still a 9 to 5? Beyond that, yes, but it's just because the society we live in now, you find that even a household where the husband and the wife works, they still can't afford to stack up their income to make things happen. At best, you're able to just to afford a living, maybe manage a holiday or two, but that's as far as it gets. And that's what a job does for you. But having a business, it means you could think beyond your space. And to go back to the point I made about optimizing your life, so you can optimize the life of those around you. So those around you are better for knowing you. Um, and
Yeah.
it's something to embrace. I don't want to waffle on. Thanks.
No, that is not
No, you're
waffling.
making a lot of sense, actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, thanks.
John, please. I know we had this conversation coincidentally today and it wasn't planned. And I said, I was trying to be the devil's advocate for someone who, is into career and, is not really entrepreneurial. Even though I personally can relate with that, I'm sure John knows that because my brain is always wanting to sell and business. I've always been like that. So, but I know that there are people out there who wake up in the morning and they love their jobs and they want to remain in their jobs, which is fine. But then, how do you then educate your kids about financial wellness outside of you making money yourself and not working with someone? It's a very valid question. So I thank you for sharing all of that. I'm sure the fathers listening today, even mothers who might show up to this out of curiosity, would learn from you about just being careful not to get trapped in the job system. And clearly, it's very clear to me that you can hardly teach your children about financial wellness or the kind of wealth we're talking about, handling money, if you're not running a business or making money yourself. It's almost impossible. However, I know that Kelly, for example, when you were working full time, 9 to 5 in that job, you made me discover the humble penny, or I had discovered them and you made me know about them even more because you talk about investments in the UK. So I know you've got a good investment culture. You dilly dally on different kinds of investments. So yes, someone listening might think, oh, I invest and whatever. But then if you don't sit down with your kids by the computer when you're looking at those graphs and having those conversations, then they are still going to miss out if they end up being a career person like you are. So I guess what I'm drawing from this is they've got to learn the reality or the harsh reality of a job not being something that could make them wealthy. However,
Yeah.
if that's the path they end up choosing, they've got to still have those financial conversations, those intentional how you spend, and when you're struggling they see it, and when you recover they see it. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story. John, I know you have a lot to say about this.
Yeah, yeah. This is a big deal for me, and I take it from this angle. From time to time, I like sort of going back to like first principles or fundamentals. Certain fundamental facts just hold true. If you work for a business as an employee and you don't have a stake, you don't own the business, right? It means that you work for another family. That's the first thing, because every business is owned by people. So every time you're working, you're really building up somebody else's family. That's one. But the second thing is that at any point, if things go south, right, you can be told to up and leave.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
experienced that first time.
You get what I mean? You can be told to up and leave. And sometimes when people think about, being made redundant, back in the day, you could lose your job or be made redundant because you were not pulling your weight, you were slacking. These days, you don't have to be made redundant because you were slacking.
Yeah,
It's AI or it's somebody buying over the business or there's COVID or it's just different things and people will lose
mm,
their jobs, right? I'm talking of hardworking people losing their jobs, right? People who've been like director of AI YouTube. That like it's like people lose jobs, right? But when you lose the job, then it dawns on you that it was not your family's job. You didn't own it. And so it brings me to another fact. Many times when you have something called the illusion that is called job security, which is such a popular hoax. There's nothing secure about it.
there's no such thing.
There's no such thing, right? And so you can spend a lot of time chasing job security. Now, but there's something Robert Kiyosaki said that's also very powerful. Since you're talking about Robert Kiyosaki, he says always mind your business, and it's a
Yeah,
very nice play
one,
on words, right? You either own a business or you are buying businesses. And you don't have to buy the entire business. You can buy shares and
by
stocks and
passport.
so on in Amazon, right? I mean, even these days, if you're very big into the sort of investment space, there's something known as fractional buying, where if you have a stock, for example, like Google or Amazon, where one stock is very expensive, these days investment is so flexible that you don't have to buy one stock. You can buy 25% of the stock that you can afford. So you still have a stake in Amazon or Google or whatever, or Nvidia, but right, you may not own the entire thing, but over a period of time, you continue to increase your asset base. So if
Yeah,
somebody
so just Bitcoin as well.
absolutely, so if somebody is, it's interesting that the more you talk, the more I'm like, oh yeah, we have a lot in common because okay, so two of us
Yeah, I
have
said that. I don't.
yeah, we have like investment property, we like investments and stuff like that, and um, so even if you're doing a 9 to 5, right? One you can do a 9 to 5, but then I'd say the first thing is to get a mindset shift. A lot of people who do a 9 to 5, and I'm talking from experience because the bulk of my life I've worked in 9 to 5, right? Even now I work as a contractor, I own businesses and I do stuff, right? But my day to day is almost like a 9 to 5. But here's the shit. It's when you look at how you manage taxes and your mindset that you start to see distinctions. I think the first thing that people need to do when they work a 9 to 5, as simple as it is they have to learn to start paying themselves first. Robert Kiyosaki has said this thing, and people just talk about it flippantly. But most people who do like 9 to 5 jobs are very used to getting billed on a regular and paying everybody else, and then they pay themselves last, right? So the first thing is you've got to pay yourself first, and by paying yourself first, it is
what is the amount of money that I'm going to take out from my salary that is going into investment, or what I like to call my war chest? It's money that I'm not paying anybody else and is going to grow and be a base. And I can use that base to invest, to acquire assets, or do whatever. And generally, when I'm talking to men, I would say you want to have a war chest that can cover 3 months of your monthly expenditure, then 6 months, then 12 months, and so on. Because, and this is a long conversation, but like a financial guy said, it makes a lot of sense. He says, a crisis, the size of a crisis is dependent on how much you have in your war chest. If you've been like me, where there's a point where you had no money, when you're very broke and then your daughter breaks a cup of tea, it's a huge crisis. It's like, my God, the cup is my life. Or you don't have money and then your tire, you have a flat tire, then it's a huge crisis. But when you've covered expenditure for like 3 months, 6 months, there is more rest in your mind that, okay, we have some time, and then you can think and strategize. So people have to sort of get into this habit. First of all, dedicate a portion to yourself, and then start building that war chest, right? The other thing, like I said, I've also spoken about investment. Even if you're doing a 9 to 5, start to buy business, start to buy equity, start to invest. And people don't realize it's not about, I'll say this carefully, it's not about the size of the asset, it's about the habit at the beginning. It's not about the size of the asset, it's about the habit. So I ran an experiment with somebody, a very good friend of mine who I will not mention. And I said to the person, hey, I'm going to do this thing. Should we do it together? And this person was like, well, I'll think about it. So what I did was, and I preached this thing everywhere, I set up a standing order. And the standing order was going to debit my accounts every week and move it into an investment instrument or investment application. In Canada, we have something called Wealth Simple. And also there's RBC Investments. And it will just debit my account. Tup, 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 tup. And I tell you, sometimes if I'm not monitoring my account, I go into overdraft. So I go into overdraft. And when that happens, I'm like, oh my God, so I have to regularize my account. But it was always debiting me and going into an investment account. And then one day randomly, I said to the person, I said, are you going to do this experiment? The person was like, well, and I told the person, I said, it's very weird, but I don't want to say the amount, but I checked that account and I had about 6 months of total monthly expense in that account. Just from passive. I wasn't thinking about it, right? But it was just there. And so the point is, many times it's that habit that gets you going, right? So a lot of the time, when I think about things like finance or I always think, what is the process that will get me to where I want to go? So sometimes we're looking to, like people make it sound like, become a businessman. It's like one day you just get $100,000. No, many times it's going to be a small thing. You try to sell one small thing, one $5 digital thing online, and then you realize that, oh my God, you have to set up Kajabi and set up this and that. But this thing that people just say, I'll just set up like this, is a bit more evolving, right?
Yeah.
Go through a process, but you change in the process. So short answer to the question is, people who do a 9 to 5, go back to fundamental reality. You don't own the job. You can lose that job at any point. What you cannot lose is, what there is a lower chance of losing when you set it up right is your own business. When you're dying, as you're walking out, maybe your last day you work in Lloyd's Bank, and no offense to Lloyd's, I worked in Lloyd's Bank, so I'm just saying Lloyd's Bank. When you're just about to die, you're not going to call your child and say, oh, call my son, and then just bring out your Lloyd's Bank employee card and give this. Like, it's not gonna it's not gonna happen. You can do that with your shares in Lloyd's if you bought a portion of Lloyd's, but you can't give the guy your employment, right? You can't. The last thing let me say this business, and then I'll shut up. Is leverage.
Yeah.
Leverage. If you're in Canada, if you're in Europe, let me use this example, because I was talking to someone and I don't think people think about this, but it's huge. If you're earning an amount of money and you're going to be financially free in 6 years, you can live anyhow you want with your family, and you're going to be financially free in 6 years, right? As long as you keep working hard. If your government taxes takes 50% of your salary, automatically you're going to have to work 12 years to get financial freedom. I'm hoping to just drive it home. If you're going to work a certain way, no taxes, and it was going to take you 6 years to get financial freedom, and then your government taxes was 50%, you are now going to work for 12 years to get to financial freedom. So all of a sudden, how a person thinks about taxes or expenditure will start to change. Now, if you are earning a certain amount and all of a sudden financial freedom was going to come in 12 years, but all of a sudden you are earning that amount as a business person, there are certain things you can do legally around your tax that may even allow you still reclaim your 6 years, or maybe worst case scenario, 7, 8 years. And then there are certain other things you can do with your business that can give you financial freedom in 3 years. But all that flexibility comes because you're running a business and not as an employee.
Absolutely.
Right? So all of a sudden it's huge. And don't get me wrong, Kelly will probably know about this. There is something very convenient, I'm telling you, when at the end of the month you just get your paycheck and you just say, oh, my pay is very small. You know, what you don't realize is that
At least it comes.
yeah, it comes. Yeah. But the business owner is not that way. The business owner is like, oh my God, if I'm an employee of my company, I have to think about my own employee deduction. Then there's the tax on profit. And then at the end of the year, I have to talk to my accountant. Yeah, it's not just breezy. And then your accountant sitting down, everything saying, oh, you have to send your monthly reports. Yeah. There is some hassle. It's not all sweet and rosy. Right? But it means that you have a higher chance of getting to financial freedom faster. When you have a business, you also can get more leverage, because all of a sudden, when you're getting some sort of cash flow, then banks are more willing to give you money. And then there's certain things that are so crazy that you can do with the financial system when you're set up as a business. So, for example, what some people do is a person has a credit card. And people, how am I going to pay my credit card? So, what some people is they have a credit card, then get something known as a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, where the charges are very low. And then they use that to pay off credit cards. And then their overall cost to pay out the overall cost they're paying out is very low. By the way, this is not financial advice. So if you want to, know the details of this, please speak to a licensed financial advisor. When you're in North America or you're in England, you've got to disclaim. So I'm just saying that there's certain benefits you have as a business person, right? So the long and short is, if you don't own a business, desire to, that's the first thing. Even if you're not going to leave your 9 to 5, you can start to experiment and buy equity. Before leaving your 9 to 5 as well, with the power of AI, you can set up a shop in 2 hours and you can sell things, but sell stuff online. And over a period of time, even if you're making $100 a month, it's fine. Then you're making $200. Oh, wow. The truth is your knowledge and skill are growing. And then it's like, oh, wow, I'm now getting 1,000. Then at some point, I'm earning the same amount of money. Now I can change my salary. I can replace my salary and then I can leave and so on. So that's how I'd speak to someone. I mean, the fundamental thing is you don't own your job. You can lose it anytime. So if you're really interested in financial freedom and safety, then I think that you pay more attention to what real security is. Yeah, that's what I think.
Can I just speak to this a couple of points to
You've
add
got
to
2
that?
minutes. You've got 2 minutes
Yeah,
because
2
of
minutes.
the 10 minutes.
Yeah, 2 minutes. As a 9 to 5 employee, what you may find helpful as well is not just elaborate on what John has said. Don't think of the business as a whole. You can think of partnership. like-minded persons, you'll be amazed by what can happen just by reaching out to a friend and saying, "Look, there's a pub down the road. How about we we meet halfway?" Or yeah, because at that point, if it's a 50K project and you can only afford 25K, is there someone that's prepared to, okay, maybe there's no, can you find two extra person that can split? You'll be amazed by how things can happen. And it does work. It does work.
Yeah, absolutely. The partnerships. Whew, this is good stuff. Good stuff. I usually have a lot to say in my head at least. I'm just like so, I am so, I knew this would be good, but I didn't know it would be this good. Thank you so much, John and Kelly. I've got 10 minutes left to round this up. So, but I've got so many questions from what you're saying, and I'm not going to dwell on them. However, I think I'll end with these last two questions to both of you. Is the topic of AI. But before I ask this question, I'd like to say this to anyone listening. The reason why me as a wellness coach will talk about money is because times without number, even in my own personal life, I notice that when people have crisis, m- you realize that the issue they're having is money issue fundamentally. Because when the Bible says money answers all things, it basically means that there is no sugar coating of it. The quality of bed you lie in, the amount of money you have could determine that. Where you go for date nights, the schools your children would attend, the areas you live in, the 25K he was talking about. I'm sure someone's head popped when you said that, like, who has 25K, hanging around somewhere. But there is
But
no
they
way.
say money don't buy you happiness, they say.
Yes, so it really, if you have issues with communication, to afford a coach, to afford a mentor, you need money. To pay for your business app, this app we're using to talk, it was paid for. It's all connected to money. Helping the in-laws, and people start having fights and arguments because there's just no money to send home to parents. And so who does what? Even money to give to the church. People fight. I know someone who broke up with her boyfriend because he paid so much money into the church and they were going to get a house to rent together. And that was the end of their relationship. I know that, you could learn how to communicate better. You could do your silences, you could meditate, you could exercise, do whatever you want to do. If you don't learn, have a good relationship with money, you will be unwell for many reasons, and there will be so much strain in your personal life and in your relationship with others. So I'm going to end with these last questions about AI. I know John is very passionate about AI. Kelly, you find it fascinating, but I don't know how far you've gone with the AI thing. But I know John is really into it. I just want your opinion on how will you raise kids? Because whether we like it or not, AI is here to stay, right? I paid for ChatGPT a few months, was it last year? I can't remember, because of the conversation I had with John and some other group of friends in open church. And we had this conversation. John was like, it's ChatGPT, you can prompt, you can do that. And I was like, okay, let's do it. The question is this: for children, how do you raise children who have, I guess, a good relationship with AI and leverage AI? And please, if you can avoid telling us to give them apps, and I'm glad that both of you have been hands-on dads. I've never heard you say, in this session at least, I'm going to teach my kids about money, so I told them to download an app. You're teaching them. So how do you in your home teach kids about relationship with AI and how they can leverage AI? John?
Well, like when it comes to I think one benefit AI has over maybe like just a regular browser is you're going to get a lot of what you're putting in. You're going to get out a lot of what you're putting in. So if you're talking to ChatGPT, or at least the current phase of generative AI that we have right now, so ChatGPT is not just going to randomly just pop up, like a random ad and just, show you some dancing women or all that kind of stuff like you have in a browser or something. That's part of the danger of technology. So if you do your job, the primary job as a parent, and you teach your children the right things, then what they will search for or how they will use AI will align with the values that they have and hopefully reflect the values you have. I see AI as really powerful, and while it has many risks, which I kid you not, they're huge risks, it's a very powerful tool. So it's almost like, is money bad? Money is not bad. Can money be bad or used badly? Absolutely. Right? Is
Absolutely.
technology a powerful tool? Absolutely. Is it bad? Well, it depends on what you're using it for. So that's exactly how I see sort of AI and, the different ways it's used by kids. So as long as, one, you're aware of the danger, and as long as you're growing in sort of your knowledge around technology, right? So there's some sort of basic things around just basic cybersecurity. If you have a camera, make sure your camera is off. Make sure you can, from time to time, maybe actually cover your camera. You want to teach your children about not giving information online, not giving access to location services if anything's unusual. They're just some sort of general things about cybersecurity. So I'm not super worried about AI. I'm not super worried about, children around phones. If you give unbridled access to phones or a browser or to the internet or to anything, there can be disastrous consequences. That's how I see it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you just realize it's a tool that can magnify what the child already has, then, or the values you're incorporating in your child, then it's perfectly fine. The children use AI to learn stuff, to learn concepts. They ask questions. They use it for writing, for troubleshooting, and all that kind of jazz. So quite a lot of stuff is possible. But in my home, when children are using a computer, it's in a central part of the house, so we can see what you're doing. I also have an app that can see your screen from my phone because I'm that kind of paranoid dad. And then when you're older and you're not in the house anymore, then you can do whatever you want to do. But hopefully by that time, you've learned all the lessons.
Train it out.
So you
Yeah.
should. That's what
Do
I
you
think.
mind sharing the app? I would like to know that app because I have the family link for Google, so I kind of know what apps they've got and all of that, but I can't see their screen.
Yeah,
So I'd like to get that app where I can actually I can see their screen.
yeah. It's called Custodio. Is it Custodio?
Custodian.
Custodio, if I recall correctly. Let me get the right spelling. Custodio. Yeah,
Okay,
Custodio.
great, thank you.
Yeah, no
But
worries.
yeah, I remember speaking to a parent and she said, "Oh, I just can't control them with their tabs. They always use the tab." And he said it's like a joke, like, we're all parents, we know these things. And I was like, no, I during the holidays I give them 2 hours tab time.
Mm.
And when that's you choose how you use your 2 hours in one go or 1 hour, 1 hour. Whatever you want to do, you've got 2 hours on your tablet every day during the half term. It's very simple. So it's like, oh, but when they come and they tell you, like, no, the time is over. it's, but yeah, train up a child in the way he should go. And when he's old, hopefully, when you've let them go, they will not depart from it. Thank you for sharing. I wish we could dive deeper into the AI stuff, but because of time, I wouldn't. But Kelly, I'm going to let you give us a closing statement by just telling us if you what you would have advice would you give your younger self. Think about when you were a father and your kids were like 0 to 5, those early stages. When you reflect back, what parenting advice would you give to yourself?
My younger self, when my
Yeah.
kids were 0 to 5.
Yes.
Wow. Mm. It's a powerful question.
Mm.
0 to 5. Okay. So I have to answer that question, I almost have to think of what life's been like from 5 to 11 and what's different. Certainly, I will I'll prioritize my health. I'll prioritize my health. It's interesting. John mentioned earlier the idea of if you have a 6-year plan to get to financial freedom and you are in a job where you get paid a lot of money, that's good. But then he factored in the tax element to it. The thing is, even with the tax element, if you still figure out that 6 years is enough, all you need to do is just go all in. I think that was me from 0 to 5. And it so happened that I mentioned earlier that when my son was growing up, unfortunately, I didn't see him crawl. So I'm watching my baby crawling, and I'm thinking, was he like this or was she like this? And it's just I'm asking this question. So clearly, the first thing is health. And I think the reason that's crucial for me was I was in a situation where, in that moment, Adaeze, you would know this, my leg was about to be amputated. And I'm glad that I've got both legs, and I'm happy that that was a wake-up call for me. So that's the first thing, the idea of prioritizing my health. The second thing is, and I've done that more recently, it's just accepting that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. The days where I've asked you to speak to my son, it's not just yourself. I've taken my son to go see a friend and just say, look, can you just speak to my son on my behalf, please? Because sometimes it might be easier for you to speak to him. Just let him know. I'll give you an example just to buttress the point. On one of the mornings, I took him out. We were running. And he goes, Daddy, why do we just run all the time? I just want to kick the ball. And I said to him, I want you to be fit. He goes, the running is boring. I'm not enjoying it. It was being open, and I get it. And I had to get a friend who was an ex-semi-professional footballer to call him. He literally called me that morning at 6 o'clock, 6 in the morning when we were rounding up. And he goes, listen to your dad, boy, listen to your dad. So it's okay to ask for help. And not just in that sense, but equally, to just take a break from it all. It's okay to say, look, use the support network. Of course, friends, family, they can just do I'll give you an example. There was a day my sister called me and said, look, Kelly, take your wife somewhere else. We'll look after the kids. It's okay. It's okay to do that. And thirdly, of course, the other things that I can add is don't sweat. Don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
Don't sweat it. I have now learned if you are a bowling fan, where you go play bowling, there are guide rails you have in this track where you throw the ball towards the 10 pin. And without those guide rails, sometimes the ball just falls off the rail. Right? What I have learned to do now, and I wish I did it then, is to be guide rails for my kids. I could see them just, the times where the room's messy. Of course, you want to teach them things like, being tidy. But the times where I let it go. So my son would ask me, even now, how does that affect the world?
I love questions, children.
No, so at that point, you're trying to come up with an answer. And you're thinking, best to just stay silent than trying to come up with something that he probably has a rebuttal for. So it's don't sweat the small stuff. Now at this point, my focus is primarily just trying to engage the kids from a place of connection rather than correction. I mean, the times where you're focusing too much on what they're not getting right. It's not about, I'm not perfect. Why am I looking for perfection? So these are the kind of things I wish I did in the early stages, because my son, at some point, I thought he was scared of me. But now I see that he respects me, and I appreciate that more than anything.
Ah, thank you. Thank you so much. That's beautiful. John, do you have any closing thoughts? Because we're ending shortly.
Yeah. I'd like to close and say, just piggybacking on what Kelly said, that at the end of the day, the most important thing is love.
Mm,
Most important thing is love. And, when I was younger, just like Kelly, I was very driven. I'm still very driven. But many times the motivation is, oh, I want to succeed. I want to get this right. And sometimes you're not doing things, you're not correcting in love. You're correcting in fear.
Yeah.
You're hurried. And when you're hurried and you're doing things not in love, but in fear, then sometimes the result is more damage. And so as I get older, right, I'm acknowledging my weaknesses in front of my kids and saying, hey, I'm not perfect, man. I mess things up. I'm learning as I go. But I love you guys. And we have this conversation. So if I was to talk to my younger self, now I know what I know, I'd be like, look, you're going to make mistakes anyway, but ultimately, love is the most important thing. Like, ultimately, love is the most important thing. And let it guide you. Yeah, that's it.
thank you so much. I'm really glad we could do this. I thank you, Kelly. I know you had worked the whole day, and you've been here having this conversation. I love talking to both of you. I talk to both of you individually. I'm bringing you both together. It's just been explosive. So thank you. I feel so enriched. I appreciate my husband more, obviously, because I'm seeing things through a father's eye. And I'm also appreciating just the privilege of parenting and the fact that we're talking about this under the umbrella of wellness. Because I tell people I can connect wellness to everything, and many times people don't get it, but wellness is connected to everything. A relationship, loving, everything is connected to your wellness, how well. And when Jesus said life in abundance, it's not just like when you die, I've come to give you life and life in abundance. What does that mean? It's parenting, it's the not sweating the small stuff. It's having those conversations, teaching them about money, and meditation, silences, going out to play, taking your rest. Because that's what this world is about. That's what life is about. So thank you so much. I hope that anyone listening would have enjoyed a lot of all that you've said, if not all. Finally, I'll end with this. Kelly has Influential Father's blog. I've been telling him you need to write more because you need to give yourself more credit with your writing, and it's good stuff. And you have so many rich
Thank you.
stories, real stuff
Thank
to
you.
share, real wisdom to
Thank you.
share. John there's so much going on, but I know the two key things that I like people to focus on right now is the project management. I have attended your project management course, and that did a lot for me in how I handle my projects. John has a course. I'm going to put the link for you to access. I don't know if the promotion is still on. If you're watching this when the promotion is still on, good luck to you. If not, you might have made the expensive version. I don't know. But one thing I know is John can teach you how to handle projects. And you've already listened to him. He can break down like complex things. He's very wise. But he can somehow bring it down to what you can relate with stories, with real life examples. And John is a great coach. I'm still waiting patiently for him to show up and say he's a father coach, fatherhood coach, or what do they call them? Fatherhood coach, whatever. But yeah, I'm hoping, I'm praying that you would do that, because I know there will be a lot of young men out there who would benefit from that ministry. And Kelly, I really hope that you do this more, because the amount of stuff you both have is incredible, and I'm so honored to be in your inner circle. I feel like I can just call you anytime I like and draw out some wisdom and whatnot. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Days.
much,
Thank you,
Adaeze.
Kelly.
Thank you.
Awesome to meet you.
Bye, John. Definitely. God will meet again.